Hello and welcome to Illuminated Life Podcast. I'm Maggie Kelly. I'm your host. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming Kristen Hobby. She's a spiritual director and mindfulness teacher based in Singapore. She helps busy moms find inner peace and calm and reduce the stress of everyday life through mindfulness and meditation practices. She then encourages and invites moms to teach mindfulness techniques to their children to create calmer, happier families. Kristen has recently completed her PhD in the area of young children's spirituality, and she's published a book titled Nurturing a Gentle Heart. Welcome, Kristen. Yes, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey, the journey that led you to what you're doing today? Hmm. Um, just returning to that sense of freedom and creativity and youth and just that place where you're no longer worrying about what anyone's thinking or anyone might be watching you or anything like that, where you're just free to be self-expressed, which unfortunately I think for all of us life just kind of creeps in and changes that part of us as we get older. Certain things happen that pile on to our lives that get us to go a little more inward than we might otherwise want to, or even notice that we are. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, it'd be great to be three again. Now, my understanding is you work with adolescents as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do? And what do you think is one of the, I guess, the biggest roadblocks perhaps for a teenager to really just sit still and be mindful? Mm-hmm. Well, and my own teenage boy who's 16, for me, it feels as though technology actually takes a piece of my parenting away from the equation because if something is going on at school or if somebody is doing something to someone else or saying something to someone else, I have no way of knowing and I have no way to parent around it. So I feel just as a parent, that's really uncomfortable for me. And, a lot of times I will recommend to my students to just create a tech break for themselves. Take an hour off each day, turn that phone off, not just turn the ringer off, turn the whole thing off. We are yeah, I do some things here at Satsang House where I teach, and the number one rule before you come into Satsang House is to leave your phone in the car. And I've had some students that have come that are really, really uncomfortable with that. But it's wonderful because towards the end of our experience together, they realize the value and they realize just how connected they are to the silly thing. In fact, I heard somebody call it the head down generation or the eye hunch, you know, because our children, yours and mine, 14 and 16, are of that generation where they're looking down more often than they're looking us in the eye. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I think, just with the idea that they are living through their social media, they're either living through, how many Snapchats they got or how many likes they got, and um, or they're texting each other back and forth. My son at one point wanted to text me from down the hall. Like that that's not going to work, honey. Let's try something different. But the idea too that like you were alluding to earlier that they're in the mix of just pure adolescence, which is the time of discovering, who am I morally, who am I ethically, who am I spiritually? Do I agree with mom and dad's perspective? Do I have my own? Can I break away and not feel concerned? Just that whole process of adolescence being a time of self discovery on its own, that then having all of that extraneous input on a moment by moment basis at sometimes, it's very difficult. I can imagine. I teach a group of students sometimes for their health class, and they are 15, 16. And I was absolutely astounded in going into the classroom and then guiding them into a silent mantra based meditation and with their eyes closed. And then when I had them in meditation, I sort of peeked to see where they were. And and 10 out of the 15 kids were asleep because they had finally given themselves permission to stop moving. And, I'm sure like your daughter, they're on all day long and yeah, they're up and they're doing what we want them to do. And then they're off to school, 8 hours of school, and then they've got 3 hours of homework. And some of them have 2 or more hours of athletics. And then maybe they spend a little time with the dog. And then they take a shower and they go to bed and they get up and do it again. So it was shocking to me. I mean, I kind of know that because that's what's going on in my home. But it was still shocking to see these children, in my mind, children, young adults, so unbelievably exhausted. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Mm-hmm. And confusing. And confusing. Yes. And I think, that's one of the greatest misperceptions of reality is that everything we need in life is out there somewhere. And it's just not so because everything we really need is right here inside of us. And all we have to do is just return to the stillness and find that place where we're comfortable. And I think that is part of the problem with some of our teens is that with all of the distraction and all that goes on in their lives, it's impossible for them to find stillness. Yeah. Mhm. Well, I think part of it is what I noticed with that younger group was that it was as if they needed permission to stop moving and that I had given them permission to sit still. And nowhere else in their day do they sit still. And it's expected of them to go at, like it is for us, to go at 100 miles an hour, to be in the doingness and the busyness of our lives all the time. And when we do that and we're still clinging and grasping and trying to find whatever it is out there that we think is going to make us happy, when we're in that mindset, it's impossible to connect with our own hearts and what we really, really want. Um, yeah, I think you and I, what we do for a living is amazing. And I'm glad to have you as a partner all the way across the world in this wonderful journey. Um, Tell me a little bit about ways in which you have grown through your personal journey in living a life illuminated. It's a big question. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm. Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, it's something I also say to my students, when they come to me and they're like, "Oh, I can't meditate. My mind is just too crazy." I'm like, "Well, that is the practice, right? Is to quiet that internal chatter and that internal dialogue." And I kind of give them about 2 weeks. If you are dedicated and you meditate twice a day, every day, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the evening, in a dedicated way, within 2 weeks, you're going to notice a subtle but very profound shift. And it becomes, instead of, I really should take the time to meditate, and instead it becomes, wow, I can't wait. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Sure. Yes. Mm-hmm. For sure. Yes. Yeah. No, no. Yeah. Yeah, I usually tell my students just find the time you do have and try to break it up into 2 sessions. Bookend your day with whatever time you have, and if you can, build up. Try to build up to that twice a day, half an hour if you can. But but if you but honestly, if you don't think you have the time, you won't do it. So just do the time you do have. Just take the time for you. That's the first step, is to be able to remember that this is about you taking care of you. And in taking care of you, you then are able to take a nice, serene, peaceful person out into the world. Yeah, which is the greatest. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And I love to tell my students that, you can start your day over at any time. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. You can start over in this moment or this moment, anytime. And I love that because there are days that I would like to start over at about noon. So, how are some ways that people can go about learning more about you? Mm, great. And what is the one piece of advice that you might give to anyone listening to Life Illuminated today? Be beautiful, beautiful. Well, it has been an absolute delight to have you on our show today, Kristen, and I really appreciate it. Your insight is fabulous, and I love that we're partners in this beautiful life of mindfulness and meditation. Yeah, we do. Well, thank you again for being here, and I look forward to having you on our show again sometime soon. All right, take care.